Well, hi again, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I am Craig Hamilton Parker, a psychic medium. If you're here for the first time, this is where we talk about all what's happening in the news from a spiritual standpoint, and I'll be giving some of my predictions about what I feel is going to be happening. Also, a lot of my comments as well, really to try to give you a bit of food for thought, to think in new ways about what goes on in the world, and share with you some of my I suppose you could call them spiritual insights, spiritual ideas, and thoughts. So, welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, nice to see you all again. And let me share some of my thoughts with you. But always, when you're here, please, when you join the channel, it's a shame to have to say this, give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you're here for the first time, because it helps that algorithm and it helps my channel and Jane's channel to flourish. And again, thank you also those of you that have become patrons and also have become helpers on the site in terms of becoming a YouTube member. It really does help us to make these videos more often, and hopefully I'll be able to do many more through 2025. Now, we're kind of in an interesting period at the moment because we're kind of in a strange lull period, I always think, after Christmas. And yet so much has been happening, hasn't it? The biggest fire ever in America, really, a whole city up in flames. And I'm still fascinated by what happened there, because I made that prediction where I said I saw Santa Monica in flames I was on the Santa Monica pier there, and I saw it as being in flames. I did say it on one show, but I can't find the clip for the life of me. Actually, I tell you what, if any of you, well, one of you, if one of the first one, if one of you actually can spot that clip and find it for me, I'll give you a free reading by Zoom. How about that, eh? So well, I'll do that, but I'll see if you can find it. I've trailed through, I can't find it unless I said it on another show or something somewhere. But anyway, I said that, but never mind. But one of the thoughts that's been coming to mind at the moment, actually, is I was getting feelings about a pandemic, because I know we've had a pandemic before, and you've got to be careful what you talk about here on YouTube, because it seems like anything like this gets censored. But I want to just say that I did make a prediction a little while back, but I felt there might be another one at some point, a different type of pandemic, not like the one we had with COVID, with all the stuff happening there. Possibly a different style of thing, not necessarily viral. And I felt that we'd also handle it and crack it, and maybe stop it becoming the worldwide dangerous pandemic that we had with COVID. And I noticed that there's some things being said in the press about a possibility of something arising in China at the moment. And it made me wonder, because at the moment here in the UK, we're doing, there's going to be a test, I believe, coming up of the alert system to alert people for national emergencies. And they're going to be testing that shortly. And I wondered, why are they testing it so suddenly? Why are they testing it? Is this this Armageddon alert, people are calling it, actually? Is there something happening? Are we testing it just in case? Are they not telling us something about what's been happening again in China? And I also saw that it would spread to Australia, didn't I, in my predictions before? So just thoughts about that. I get a bit of a feeling that we might get something in 2025 on that. But don't be fearful, because I feel it won't be a can fall on lockdown like we had before. But there might be some rattles for that. And it makes me wonder too, because that last pandemic was it kind of came at a time just when we had all the uprisings in Hong Kong and when we had Trump coming into power and really getting into his stride, and the West generally starting to get into its stride. I mean, here in the UK, the then Conservative government had a full package of measures to introduce to cut taxes and set the economy moving and do the Brexit. Let's do Brexit and all the rest of it. And then suddenly it all stopped. That stopped. Trump was stopped in his tracks with it. The world was stopped in its tracks with it, and Hong Kong was stopped in its tracks. I wonder if another one might be on the horizon, because they still haven't got to the bottom of that, have they? They've still not got to the bottom of that. And I hope that Trump will sort of open the files on some of those things, as he said he will make the public much more aware of the cover-ups that have gone around, and in the legal system too, I presume, from his point of view. So just a few thoughts there. What do you think? Do you think there's something like that in the background? It makes me wonder. Another question. I saw a lot of questions have been coming in from people on the comments, and I can't answer all of them, of course, but some of the bigger questions that have been around here in the UK. Everybody hates Rachel Reeves. She's our tax collector, I suppose, chancellor. But there's been some terrible tax increases. I see more and more of those ahead. I feel corporation tax being hit. I'm seeing property taxes again being hit a second time, and it's going to be some very serious issues, I feel, and a lot of calls for her to go. There already is, but she's not going to go quite yet. She will go. And I was thinking, when will she go? I feel that she's going to hang on in there till October, because if you take it from Keir Starmer's point of view, if he got rid of her now, he'd be in a real fix, really, because you don't get rid of a chancellor a few months into your first term in office. So I feel she's a kind of a Iron Lady, as she's calling herself. She's calling us trying to reference herself as being like Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. The only thing she's got in common with her is she's very, very stubborn, and I don't see stubbornness as a virtue. Yes, strong will can be very helpful, and determination can be very helpful, but stubbornness often brings in its wake chaos, and we're going to see a lot of chaos in the coming months in the UK economy, particularly as it all starts to backfire. And I don't see growth coming. I know we've had a small increase, a small change to the inflation, which is helpful, but that's, I think, just a blip. I see us getting serious problems here in the UK in the coming months. Now, also coming around at the moment is the Gaza peace accord. Unfortunately, I see that breaking down. I don't feel that that's going to work. And it all looks like it's working at the moment today, as I'm doing these predictions on the 17th of January 2025. It's all looking rather good, and Joe Biden's coming in, and they all want the bunting around them that we achieve this, and Trump is saying, actually, hang on, guys, I was only doing this because they knew I'm coming into power. But I feel that Netanyahu is a bit of a slippery fish, actually. And he's looking for an excuse to keep the war going. And the slightest thing that will come, opportunity to escalate it again, it will happen. You remember he went to America and saw Trump, didn't he? He went and met him before the announcement, before the election was decided, and some words must have been exchanged about what he plans to do. And Trump has probably said to him, look, I need to sort this out. I can't have hostages held like that. We got to do a sort of deal out somehow, because he always wants a deal. But Netanyahu, I feel, has other plans. He can only stay in power, really, so long as he's warmongering. But it's not really just about personal power. It's about trying to complete his legacy. It seems like all politicians want to leave a legacy behind them. They want to become historic figures. And I feel he wants to say, I made Israel great again, maybe even expanded its borders ultimately. Because I feel that the West Bank is still not being completely addressed. And I feel that there's going to be issues with that again. So I see it all flaring up again. And as I've said before, I see ultimately what he's got to do now is put Iran in its place. And I think something's going to happen still there. So I don't feel game over with that at all. So there's something going to happen there. And also, we're going to see so much happening in America with Trump coming into power. And obviously, we know he's going to be signing off one thing after another. But one other thing came to mind, particularly when I was trying to tune into the idea of what was happening with the Gaza and the Middle East, is that this is also coming up. I think it's this year. It's the 785th anniversary of NATO. I just saw Trump turning the tables over, almost symbolically in my mind. I saw like a table being turned over. Will Trump use the 785th party, as it were, to really bring to book the fact that NATO is not fit for purpose at the moment because people are not contributing? And could there be something also tied in with this with Ukraine? Because I was feeling that opportunity to question NATO that comes with its anniversary. Could that also be a time when we question the war in Ukraine, and there's going to be some deals done over who is in and who is out of NATO, which would be very pleasing to Putin, to see NATO shaken around a bit and maybe help lubricate the deal, as it were, that's going to be done, because Russia does not want to give any land away, and Ukraine obviously doesn't want to give any land away. But I feel a deal ultimately will be done with Ukraine this year, and it will involve Russia retaining lands, and it will retain lands like I saw it originally as a thin slither. So they've taken a substantial chunk. Maybe that line is moved along a bit and it's like cut in half, so we have a thin slither all down linking the Crimea with Russia. Ultimately, that would be a great thing from Russia's point of view, because we can build train lines, we can supply our ships, we can keep a window on the west through that Crimea. I mean, the whole Crimean War was fought once before with the British, wasn't it? And that's all happening all over again. So that's one of the things I'm seeing coming up. Also, Elon Musk will fund Tommy Robinson. How about that one? I feel Elon Musk, he's already said, I'm going to give some money to Reform Party. And I think he may still give some money to Reform Party. But I see funds also being filtered to Tommy Robinson. Now, a load of you told me off the other day because I said Tommy Robinson was a far right figure. And I suppose he's more to the right than most, as it were. But like you, I do agree. I hate that word far right. I quite often listen to the BBC particularly, and many other news outlets, who always put figures as being far right. I've never heard anybody being called right. I've only been heard far right. So everybody's far right, apart from perhaps the Conservative Party, because they've gone pretty much to the left in their thinking. But it does seem to be almost amusing to count the far rights you see when people talk about politics nowadays. Everything's far right unless it's part of this far left, liberal left agenda. So people, I think, are getting fed up with this, the fact that the BBC do all these things. And you know what? Here in the UK, we call it the English Civil War. They're going to actually rename it. The BBC are renaming a series. Instead of calling it the English Civil War, which it's always been called, it's called the British Civil War. There seems to be this war on being British, it seems, and that does concern me. quite a lot. Anyway, going back to Musk, I think his big thing. And tell me what you think about this again in the comments. But I think his big thing is that these Muslim, I suppose they call them rape gangs. Actually, that's what it was. There was these gangs that disrupted people in Oldham and Rotherham and places like that, and the victims have not been helped, and it was all swept under the carpet. And Musk, I feel, is kind of a champion for those that have been bullied a lot, because he has been bullied a lot in his childhood, and God knows what happened in his childhood. Something perhaps that he's never talked about maybe happened. Maybe he had some sort of inappropriate behavior done towards him. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, this is speculation, but he certainly, I feel, is jumping onto the British politics, because he's seen that's triggered his thoughts. Here they are squashing news again. And this is obviously not good for X, because X wants to be the platform where uncensored news goes on. And there's a massive movement particularly with Starmer and the Labour Party at the moment, to make everything as sanitized and as regulated as possible. And there's some dangerous laws coming in potentially to censor speakers. Me too, perhaps. I mean, it gets more and more difficult all the time to think, I better not talk about that topic, or I better not talk about that topic, because I might be triggered as being far right. All I'm doing is talking about these things. I'm certainly not that way. But I mean, where do we go with this? And I think that this whole movement that's going on is Musk is seeing that and beginning to think, hey, just a minute, I can understand that. Okay, he came from South Africa, but he had strong family links to England. And like I say, here in England, we can't call ourselves, for example, you can't call yourself an Anglo-Saxon now. That's considered as a bit kind of racist. You can call yourself anything else, but you can't call yourself an Anglo-Saxon, because that seems to be kind of, you think that's racist if you're Anglo-Saxon. That seems absolutely madness to me. I mean, actually, England is Angle land. That's what it came from originally, the Angles, So anyway, I don't know. It was going a bit crazy, in my opinion. These are thoughts, I suppose I'm having a bit of a rap today, really, about some of the things, because I do find, it's happening all over the world. There's this, what I would call, a dismantling of our national identities and cultures. We've got it also in all the European countries. There's a dismantling of your culture. You're not allowed to call yourself Swedish. You're not allowed to call yourself German. You're not allowed to call yourself American. I mean, American's much more of a melting pot. But we get in this divisions in society that we're not allowed to be we're not allowed to be the peoples who we have always been in our countries. I mean, it does worry me a lot, and I think this is a danger. This is a danger that comes of multiculturalism, actually. It's such a sticky topic to talk about. And particularly if we try to look at it from a spiritual point of view, because all people are one, all people are equally valid, all people are important. We're all the same. We all come from the same one consciousness. I'll talk about that in a minute, actually. But we all come from this one same source, ultimately. So I don't want it to sound horrible, because all people are just equally as valid. But we've had in our societies this idea where we're trying to get what's, I think, called pluralism, where all people can work together and be one culture. And unfortunately, if we look at history, it doesn't work. Because if you look at places, for example, like Cyprus, you get a blend of people and it splits, it divides into two, and it divides into and different societies. Pluralism splits when you get too many people in the same nations. And I think this is one of the problems that's happening with the world, why Trump wants to build a wall, why Europe is beginning to question its migrant populations, because there's just too many. Same thing happened in India too. After the British messed it all up over there, what happened is India divided, a pluralistic society split into India, into Pakistan, into Bangladesh. That it didn't work. That didn't work in Israel either. Israel for a long while was getting on quite well. The Jews and the Arabs actually got on quite well in Israel, but that split into two. And it seems that we always end up like the Balkans, I suppose. You could even say it, even the same thing about Northern Ireland. Much the same. You know, we want everybody to get on, but they divide naturally into their own societies. And we, the English, have been even worse at that around the world. We've done it all over the world in our history too. We make our own separate societies within societies. I mean, there's places in India when I've been there that look like you've stepped into leafy suburbs of London with telephone boxes and red post boxes and so forth. We wanted to make our own little enclaves in these countries. It's natural for people to do that. So this is why I don't think multiculturalism can ever work. They become separate societies within a society. If you have just a few people integrating into a society, they naturally integrate. The Indians have a particularly, and the Sikhs and Hindus have a particularly good way of always integrating into a society and yet keeping their cultural values at the same time, working in great harmony. But not all societies can do that. The British were the examples of that. We'd always impose our stamp on the world, but the same can happen with Muslim religions. They want to impose their stamp on the world just as we did. And those are the dangers that we're getting in society and the things that nobody wants to talk about and nobody wants to address, sadly. And this is the way ahead. I'm really off on a rant today. Sorry, guys. The other thing I see happening is this: that we got the rise of reform here in the UK, because these thoughts that I'm talking about here, people are thinking about, and they say, right, we want to change our society. We particularly, one of the biggest things in the UK, and it's happening in America, and it's happening throughout Europe and Italy, in Denmark, in Holland, Netherlands. Here we go again, and the Scandinavian countries, all over, and France, of course. If you look at all of them, there's a division happening, and the same thing's happening here in the UK, except our voting system went a bit crazy because those that the opposition to who's in government at the moment split in two, so it all fell apart because most people here in the UK who would normally vote Conservative felt that they'd gone far too far to the left and were too middle ground, and so they ended up splitting that vote and letting in the Labour government. And I think many people, because they like Rachel Reeves and things, we're beginning to realise that when you vote Labour, what you normally get is not what they've told you, and it's happened throughout history. And that's why older people like myself tend to usually vote more to the right, because they've seen what happens when you let the left in. God, I'm really on it today. But you know, I see that there will be ultimately a pact between the Conservatives and Reform, and Nigel Farage says, no way will he do that. He will. They'll start to come. They'll have to come together and say, look, and we'll see that in May when we start to see the big shift towards Reform voters. I feel at that time when the council elections come up. And actually, we've even have now. There was a poll in the Times that people's voting intention now is much more towards Reform and has overtaken all the other parties. Only a little bit, but my God, it could keep on and keep on. It's getting real momentum. It's very strange times we live in, because people feel, and this is not just in the UK, people feel that their voice is not being heard. But when Trump comes in, that's going to really shake things up, because those voices are very similar voices to the voices that were happening in America, and felt that they were being held back by a system and by the legal system and by and the media that were trying to hold back those voices. So we're going to see it throughout Europe, and we're going to see it throughout the world, I feel. This move towards the right, which I spoke about before, and it's happening. And like I say, we can't that everything that seems to be anti-BBC is far right, it seems. Right. So I see that. And also in due course, Starmer will fall. He will fall. And I feel it will be in 2025. It's not yet, but we can see these things beginning to falter at the moment. And it makes you wonder, what will happen in the way ahead. And when we look at the world around us and we see all the horrible things happening in the world, we see the wars, we see the political strife, we see the divisions in society. I think it's really important in our own lives not to, what I would say, internalize the news, because obviously I watch the news now because I make these predictions. So I keep up, I need to keep up with it to know what's going on in the world. I can't predict about things if I'm not aware what's happening. At the same time, one's got to not be influenced too much by it. But I've noticed when I watch it, it's shouting at you all the time, the news, isn't it? When you turn the news off, you think, oh, thank God, it's like some bloody person that won't shut up. Like me now. But it's like it really has a real it's intrusive into us in the way it attacks us almost. And I think it's really important in our world not to keep internalizing these things and take them inside and start worrying about it, because I think it's really important sometimes to step back from all this stuff. If we're spiritually minded people, we have to also come to that point in ourselves where all the clatter of the world is of the world. And sometimes I think it's important just to sit back from it all and just let it all happen. Now, I think that's really important in our material life. Our impulse always, and we're taught to do this in schools and the way we're trained from children, to always take action, to always act. We've got to sort this out. Now, up to a point, yes, we must allow that must do that in life. But do we not also have to sometimes step back from the whole lot and just let the spiritual side of ourselves develop? And it's not something that requires action, that it's something we almost have to let it happen. A bit like, the grass will grow by itself. It might require a bit of watering, but it will happen of its own accord. We can't force it. And plant and life and nature is like that. And we are like that in ourselves. So it's very important, I feel, in our lives to step back sometimes, to let the world just happen. And the most you can do for humankind is to do this as well, is to spend some time in contemplating the divine within ourselves. That's the best we can do for the world. We think, oh yeah, we can sort the world out, we can do this, we've got to do some work. That's all part of it. That's our karma yoga. But also at the same time, there is that aspect that we need to take it on board, that if we become lost my camera. If we become awake, enlightened type of people, not only when we awake, the spirit world awakes. All planes of existence awake with an awakened being. When a great being like the Buddha or any of the great beings that have been here that have awoken, when that happens, it awakens everything around you. It awakens all the spirit worlds. It awakens all the lokars. It opens up all the bardos. It opens up all the aspects, all the multiverse awakens, because that's what we're here for. And that don't happen in the world. That happens when we step back from it and we look into and understand the glory of the self with a capital S, that lies behind all of this. And there was great teachers like Rama Maharishi. He taught all about all this. Was often criticized for, it was the Second World War was beginning to start to rage, and he said, well, don't do anything about it, just look into keep asking, who am I? What is all this? And that was great on some levels, but we have to act and not act. It's almost a foolishness that we have to, it's madness to act, but we have to do it. But we act within the world, but at the same time, we need to also take on board those ideas that we also have to withdraw from the world at the same time. We're doing the two things at once. It's a paradox. Enlightenment is a paradox. It's that we're in the oneness of being, but at the same time, we're in the plurality of the world. If that's the right word. Because, again, when you look at it all, and this is often in Hinduism and things as well, but it's in all philosophies in different ways in many respects. It's all a dream. In Hinduism, the idea is it's a Vishnu who is said to have dreamed the universe into existence. And it's like saying that everything here is God's dream. God dreamed the universe. You know, it wasn't, it just became, it came out of consciousness, you see. Consciousness was there to begin with, but consciousness, which is hard to explain, it's not just awareness, it's like a state. It's being, consciousness, bliss are all one part of a whole that unfolds and manifests and has already manifested over the billions of time of existence, because it's also timeless. But the universe is dreamed. So we realize that it's all an illusion. It's all what the Buddhists would call as well, and also the Hindus, the idea of samsara, the idea of, and in many ways, it's like the Matrix. And actually, some scientists, you know, I mean, I think it was a guy in Portsmouth. I think it was Melvin Vopson. Melvin Vopson, I think the name was. I'm not sure exactly. He was a scientist that came up with the idea that actually, when you look at AI and the way AI is developing, it would be quite natural for to make a matrix-like universe, a counterfeit reality, I think is a good word to call it. You know, that this reality is just a program in a computer, and because it would be inevitable, because the huge vastness of time, we probably choose the best period of history, which probably is now. God knows what the future period of history is, but set it all in a good time like now. We might already be billions of years into the future. We might ourselves be a matrix, a computer program, which is an interesting concept. But I also look at slightly differently to that, because I think, well, it was that before. That's what it was originally. It was originally the dream. It was Vishnu having the dream. It already was a matrix right from the start. So we don't have to build a materialistic artificial intelligence to say, to build other matrices. We could build dreams within the dream. And in fact, we think about our own personal lives, and our personal lives are a dream within the dream. We are a dream within God's dream, as it were. We're dreaming our life in a collective dream, as it were. And that's why, in many respects, the world around us is much more malleable. I think when we go to the spirit world, we understand that more, because people say to me, what is the spirit world like? And when I get spirit world talking to me and giving me information, or I'm doing a reading for someone, I'll often get little nuggets, little golden nuggets about the next world and what it's like. And it's different for everybody in some ways. It's like a dream within a dream again. And some people will dream a world. I remember listening to Jane today. She was talking to someone who had never encountered a medium before, and she was worried about heaven and hell, and she'd come from a strong Catholic background and was worried about what the next world's like. And Jane was explaining in very simple terms, well, you know, it's if you'll find there that it'll be a world just like you know here, and if you loved your grandma's house, you'd be at your grandma's house and things like that. And it's true. It's another reality that it takes the form that is most suitable for us, which sounds crazy. I call it tea and biscuits in heaven. It sounds so trite and so daft and so fantasy based in some respects, but it is the way it is. It's like the realities we create around ourselves in the next world become malleable. Just like when we go into sleep, we our dreams, like last night, I remember dreaming about a period from my childhood. It was as if it was just happening. I was 2 years old, you know, I can remember, and memories of being 2, and it's just like it was there now. And it is like that in the unconscious mind, in this dreaming self, and it's the same in the spirit world too. So when we have all these troubles in the world around us, you know, let's remember sometimes that it's all a dream, you know, and the universe is there supporting us. And in a dream, you're 100% safe, aren't you? You know, nothing can harm you. In a flow of consciousness of existence, you're 100% safe. You will always be. You are always there. And the only thing we want to be is be good within the dream. We want that dream to be happy. So if we can form and develop and feel a sense of happiness within the dream, if we can let happiness sort of well up from us, the whole universe becomes happy. Just as when a person enters enlightenment, the whole universe becomes enlightenment. In fact, it becomes what it already is. We become what we already are. Anyway, I've probably gone on far too long. I've gone right from Rachel Reeves all the way to what is the meaning and center of consciousness in the universe. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed some of that today. I am also obviously some reminders to you. If you get my books, if you want to go dive deeper in some of my thoughts and some of my ideas, if you like interacting with me more, become a patron, particularly, and I'll interact with you through the patron site, or you want to watch more bits of video, and you just want to plain support us, become a YouTube member, and it helps us. That helps me to be able to find the time to be able to do all these for you. And thank you again for supporting us with your subscriptions, with your thumbs ups, and with the your amazing comments that come through, because I do try to read all of them if I can. Okay, and so I'd better just find that button on the screen there. Where are we? Right. Well, we're going to say goodbye to you now, guys. And like I say, have a think about it. If you can find that clip for me, I can add it onto these end clips for you. All right. See you soon, guys. Bye for now.
If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, The Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine.
I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short.
I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. The marvellous person she is. She does something extraordinary. That could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay.
Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right?
A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023.
I've said it before and I say it again. I feel Israel, with the help from the USA, will strike the Iranian nuclear facilities.
I said that there would be an earthquake that would shake New York.
At this time, I've been sensing that for a while that there's going to be a big earthquake of some sort. And this could well come up during April period.
I'm seeing a bridge collapsing, actually the whole infrastructure of it going.
I predict something very dark happens to President Joe Biden. He's been pulled from power, sacked, as it were, and quite close to the election time. But I kind of sense it's more to do with illness, perhaps, senility, and people stopping him because of that. So it could even be that a new candidate will run for the presidential nominee. I predict that Trump will win the November 2024 election, and I feel very strongly that the black vote is going to move towards Trump. See him as a sort of a bit of a cool guy. I can't see Trump being put in jail despite what they're throwing at him. I can't see a jail sentence with him. But I get the feeling one of the candidates has an attempt on the candidate's life. Could there have been a plan to assassinate either him or Trump, perhaps? There's going to be an assassination attempt on Trump, I think. And that will fail. But he might maybe get wounded or something like that.